Well, once upon a time, back in the 1940s and 1950s, a Canadian couple dominated the world of powerboat racing. And indeed, that sport was king at the time. The couple happened to be Harold and Lorna Wilson. They earned their reputation on Northern Ontario's front doorstep, the Muskokas. Hundreds of thousands of people would gather on lake shores to watch those powerboat races, races that had competitors from all over the world. Bill Plumstead is a filmmaker from North Bay. In fact, he's just finished a docudrama about Harold, Lorna, and their boat. And when I spoke with him earlier today, I asked him to more or less introduce us to Harold and Lorna Wilson.
Well, they met as university undergraduates at the University of Toronto. I think 1930, could be 31. She recorded the license plate number of the car. He gave her a lift in. It was raining, and he gave her a lift to class. And found out who he was and got his timetable. And anyway, they got to know each other.
Wait a minute now, Bill, you're telling us that she was kind of a stalker or what?
Oh, no, I don't think she was a stalker. I think she just,
So she liked the guy?
Yeah, she liked the guy.
So she jotted down?
I think she liked his automobile, too. Anyway, he invited her up to their cottage in Muskoka. He was already starting to race boats in local regattas, just ordinary boats, not necessarily built for racing, and he was winning them. So he put her in the boat and tried to scare her, and didn't work. She was from a very athletic family. And
so they became a racing team.
So they became a racing team, and they cleaned up in regattas up in Muskoka.
And they were a couple for life, were they?
Well, they fell in love, and then they married. And by the time they married, they had won 2 world championships at the Canadian National Exhibition.
I didn't grow up here in Ontario, but the sense that I get of looking at history books and so on is that boat racing was really a part of summer life in that part of the world, in Muskoka, correct?
Yes, it certainly was. And I think it was more in Canada and even internationally than it is today. I think the cars have taken over, and the Indy 500 is very popular and similar kinds of races. But back in the 30s and 40s, boat racing actually attracted more crowds than any other sport. There were upwards of 100,000 people at several of the races. And it was big. I think it was big stuff.
So in terms of a filmmaker, you have a tough job here. You have to tell the story of Harold and Lorna. You have to tell the story of their love of racing on the water. And there's a very special boat that comes into play here, and motor, too.
Yeah, it's a tall order to tell the racing lives over 19 years, because they stopped their racing in 1950. Well, there are really 2 boats. Miss Canada 3 was their most winning boat. It won the President's Cup. It won the Silver Cup. And it was a beautiful boat. Just the movie will show just how it was a work of art, really. It was lovely to look at as well as a high performer. But Father said, let's go for the biggest trophy of all, the Harmsworth Trophy, world supremacy in boat racing. So they built Miss Canada 4. And Harold said, well, if we're building a big boat, 33 feet long and 10 feet wide, so you could get your calculator and figure out the square footage. Just a monster of a boat.
And the motor they put in it was a monster.
Harold said, let's go for the biggest one of all. And at that time, Rolls-Royce in England had developed the most powerful engine they ever made before they switched over to jets, and that was the Griffin. About 3,000 horsepower. Never intended to go into a boat. It was intended for an aircraft.
Yeah. So Harold and Lorna put this motor into Miss Canada 4. What happened?
Well, they had a wonderful mechanic by the name of Charlie Volker. Harold and Lorna's expertise was in racing. Harold had a lot of background in engineering. That was his degree at Toronto. But it was he and the father, who was an engineer, and Charlie Volker, the 3 of them who really masterminded getting this aircraft engine into a boat and to make it work.
Does the boat still exist, Bill?
Well, the boat has had a long history. It rolled out of the Gravette shop early in 1949, and they raced it in the first Harmsworth, I think in September. So they only had about 4 months to check it all out. And for a machine of this dimension, I mean, in boating, it was almost like the Avro Arrow. It was a supreme piece of technology. So she was discarded, survived a fire, ended up in a chicken coop upside down, was rescued by an American who restored her somewhat and drove her around just waving at crowds, gave it back to Canada, and then it ended up in the Cheese and Agricultural Museum in Ingersoll, which was Harold's hometown, and it rested there for 19 years until last fall. And it is now almost fully restored in a boat builder's shop in Port Carling, and a Griffin engine has finally arrived from England and is sitting beside the boat.
Now, you've put the whole story together in this film. Where will people be able to see your work? Well,
Dock North Film Festival in North Bay has chosen it as their featured film for the last day. It's going to be shown at 7 p.m. at the Capitol Center in North Bay on Sunday, August the 19th. The so-called world premiere is going to be held in Gravenhurst the following week, the 22nd and 23rd of August.
Bill, congratulations. Thanks so much for telling us about this today, and kudos to you.
Well, thank you for calling, Barry. I'll just sign off by saying that although in a sense it's a Muskoka story, the production, including the actors in the film, are all North Bay.
Cool. Thanks,
so
Bill.
It's a northern film. Bye for now.
That's North Bay's Bill Plumstead. His docudrama called Harold and Lorna will wrap up the Dock North Film Festival in North Bay, as he pointed out, in mid-August. And you know what? It really is kind of cool. If you'd like more information on Bill's work, you can visit haroldandlornamovie.com. Look at some of the photographs and some of the trailers that he's posted there. That's haroldandlornamovie.com. They were a very pretty-looking couple. And when I was looking at Bill's website, I had the impression that I was looking at stories like, from the old days of Charles Lindbergh and his partner, Anne Morrow Lindbergh. So that's haroldandlornamovie.com, and you can get all the details there. A couple of things to tell you about what we've posted on